Hi everyone, my name is Justin Leung. I am a USDA postdoc at UC Davis in the Plant Sciences Department, and you can reach me at my email, jcleung@ucdavis.edu, or follow me on my Twitter at JustinCLeung. Thank you again for joining me for my talk today at Botany 2022, titled Nonperiodic Restoration Management in Grasslands Can Promote Native Woody Shrub Encroachment. Before we get started today, I want to start with some brief land acknowledgements to mention that the research and work on which this land was undertaken was the unceded territory of the Amamutsin and Ohlone tribes, where numerous people were violently removed and taken to missions, and now the tribes are working towards decolonization and relearning traditional land stewardship in modern days. I also want to thank my various faculty's support and advisors, as well as the Younger Lagoon Reserve staff for assisting in this project, as well as my field assistants, Patrick Turner, Hallie Holmes, Ernesto Chavez Velasco, Graham Tanaka, and Janine Tan. This paper was recently published this year on restoration ecology, and you can find it at the DOI listed above or on the QR code right here. California grasslands occupy a large space within California and thereby are really important for the state and for the country in supporting high levels of biodiversity as well as carbon storage and resiliency. California grasslands previously evolved with human management and periodic disturbance, often administered by indigenous tribes through methods such as prescribed burns. And furthermore, our grasslands in California also used to experience disturbance from large grazing ungulates, which are no longer present on the landscape. However, these periodic disturbances through burning or grazing were important and are still important for maintaining our grassland ecosystem services, as well as the large amount of biodiversity it supports. And this is especially true because in grasslands, there are a lot of species that require disturbance to germinate, and for example, may require the heat of fire, or the chemical composition of smoke, or some scarification from trampling of ungulates. And this is really important, and it also helps them open up bare ground that is also important for annual forb species that make up the super blooms we often see in California deserts and grasslands. Woody species invasion is a particular problem in California grasslands because it, as mentioned, can affect important ecosystem services like biodiversity habitat, as well as carbon storage and resiliency from fire and drought. Woody invasion is also a problem globally, and through previous reviews and studies, some have found that woody invasion may be slowed or halted by drought, and thus may no longer be a problem given the trajectory of climate change we're experiencing. We also know that restoration may be needed to potentially prevent habitat conversion of grasslands in particular area that are susceptible to woody invasion or other types of disturbances and plant invasions. And thus, we need to figure out a particular way or particular methods in order to limit woody invasion while restoring grasslands, because we do know that certain restoration actions can promote woody invasion by bearing ground, allowing for seeds to set and plants to grow, and through other mechanisms. For example, coyote brush, Baccharis pilularis, is a very common woody native species in California, which is also a little bit weedy and invasive. It easily resprouts after being cut or grazed, so it's not easily extirpated through those methods. It also recruits well after mechanical disturbances, as shown by Laris et al. In 2017. And it can also be a problem because invasion of woody species like Baccharis pilularis or coyote brush can also alter fire patterns and fire regimes, leading to sometimes hotter and more destructive fires, which is an especially poignant concern for California. So to better understand this potential for woody invasion in California grasslands, I actually took advantage of a previous study I did for the first chapter of my dissertation. And a lot of the study and results that I'll be talking today actually came out of these unexpected observations I originally saw within these research plots. So if you look up here on the slide, we can see that there are ambient plots that are control, which means they were unplanted and unrestored, and also plots that were restored with 12 native species, several individuals of each, and were mowed initially prior to any of the planting. They also have drought structures, which are part of the International Drought Experiment, IDE, standard protocol, that in this area limits 60% of incoming rainfall to simulate a 1 in 100 year drought after 5 years. And so after a few years of working at these plots, I started to notice the plots that were planted started to have a very high number of coyote brush recruits, and that it started to grow big and overtake the plots. Whereas I noticed in the unplanted plots, there often were no Baccharis or coyote brush plants that I could see just loosely scanning with my eye, which led me to become really curious about whether or not restoration actions are actually promoting this woody invasion and converting the habitat that we restored into a less desired habitat type, although it would still be native. So to better understand the potential of woody invasion after restoration and during drought in coastal California grasslands, I asked these questions about this observational study I was undertaking. First, do non-periodic restoration actions, or those that are one-off, promote woody encroachment of coastal grasslands? And second, does drought slow or halt woody invasion in California coastal grasslands? To answer these questions, I used a previous experimental structure that I had been using for my dissertation, as I mentioned, that were planted with several individuals of 12 native species into plots that were primarily invaded by annual grasses. And those plots, half of them were exposed to drought through 60% reduction, simulating a 1 in 100 year drought. There were 5 replicates of each plot type, which were 3 by 3 meters in size, totaling for a total of 20 plots of the 4 different treatments: restored and drought, unrestored and drought, unrestored ambient rainfall, and restored ambient rainfall. In 2019 and 2021, I measured the plant community composition to the species level and estimated the plant cover of all species within 6 quadrats within the plot. The quadrats were about 1 by 3 meters in size. In 2019 and 2020, I counted and measured the total abundance of Baccharis pilularis and each individual's stem diameter in 2019 and 2020. We found that restored plots had significantly higher Baccharis pilularis recruitment and cover, whereas unrestored plots had 0 recruitment or individuals, which I had seen visually walking through the area, but was a bit unexpected because I did actually expect to see 1 or 2 individuals in the unrestored areas, just maybe a little smaller. So on the plots here on the slide, we can see on the x-axis is, for the first figure, the sampling year of 2019 and 2022, and on the y-axis is the counts of individuals that we found. And in the second figure, we see on the y-axis the overall canopy cover of Baccharis pilularis, and on the x-axis the treatment. And the colors here, blue represents ambient rainfall and orange represents rainfall exclusion or drought. And so even though we did see that restored plots had higher recruitment of Baccharis pilularis and higher cover, we didn't necessarily find that drought had a standard effect for both cover and individual counts. We found that drought did reduce the total number of individuals that we observed within the experimental plots, but we did not see that drought decrease the overall canopy cover of Baccharis pilularis, indicating that there could be some compensatory growth and that the individuals that do survive the drought are able to still grow to the same levels as the total amount of individuals in the undroughted plots. So, in conclusion, we found that infrequent restoration activities or one-off restoration actions such as singular planting or weeding efforts, can create small disturbances that facilitate woody invasion by Baccharis pilularis, a native woody shrub in California. Establishment of periodic disturbance regimes may be needed to prevent woody encroachment within these grasslands if the underlying management goal is to preserve grassland habitats. And that could be especially important in California because, as I mentioned previously, California grasslands support a massive amount of species richness and biodiversity, as well as regional importance and for carbon sequestration and resiliency to climate change. We also found that restoration of droughted plots or drier microhabitats may potentially limit the total number of woody recruitment, number of woody individuals recruiting, but management is likely still needed to prevent woody invasion from taking over the habitat, as we found that the shrubs that did establish in the drought plots still achieved a similar cover as the shrubs from the non-droughted plots. With that, I want to again thank you all for listening and attending my talk today at Botany 2022, and I'm happy to take any questions either through now live or through my email again at jcleung@ucdavis.edu, or you can follow me on my Twitter at JustinCLeung. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your Botany 2022 experience.